Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we actually have quite a few figures to take a look at today. We've got some more Wow World figures, and it's been a little while actually since we had reviewed something from Wow World, but I think that's mostly due to the fact that it seems like they always use the same few figures kind of on repeat, which gives you kind of like the opportunity to own all sorts of different versions of the same figures. But it also is a little depressing when you see that they're not releasing any new species. However, the figures that they have are actually pretty cool, but I will say that these ones here are probably the best versions that I have seen out of any of the Wow World figures so far. They have released some pretty cool ones, and specifically like the bigger kind of like rubber-like ones, I am a pretty big fan of those. But these ones are like their battle damage sort of versions, and again, sculpt-wise, I feel like the sculpts have never looked better as far as the detail goes. Paint-wise, they're also quite nice as far as the paint applications go. Not amazing, but still pretty nice as a whole, and of course having kind of like a Dino Damage, battle damage type aspect to them is quite fun. And I have 4 different dinosaurs here to take a look at today. However, there are more than that in this line, but I actually have all of them. I'm just not going to review all of them in one shot because there's just so many. I don't want to. There's 7, I think, altogether. So to review 7, regular sized figures in one review would take forever. So I figure we'll review these 4 because I have at one time or another reviewed pretty much every one of these figures as far as the sculpt goes, but not these particular versions, which means that this review can flow a little quicker because we won't really have to go over the sculpting of these figures. But what we have here is, first of all, the Carnotaurus. So, of course, I would have the Carnotaurus. We've also got ourselves the Velociraptor that you can see right here. And then back there, we've got a Dilophosaurus and the T-Rex. So, a few different carnivores this time around. As far as the packaging goes, there's not really a whole lot going on with it. Pretty much your standard as far as what you normally see for Wow World. But here on the back, this gives you an idea of what all of the different species are that are in this line. As we can see, we've got a Triceratops, a T-Rex, a Dilophosaurus, Carnotaurus, Velociraptor, a Spinosaurus, and a Tyrannosaurus. And of course, we're taking a look at these 4 right here, and then these 2, and that one would be in the next review when I get to those. But again, they're pretty neat looking, so I'm pretty excited to pop them out of the box here and check them out. So let's do that right now. So we've got ourselves the Carnotaurus, we've got ourselves the Velociraptor. That might stand, yeah, it stands, but not great. We've got ourselves the Dilophosaurus, and we've got ourselves the T-Rex. Now, again, as I said, even though the paint's a little ugly on the Rex, but as I said, these are probably the best these figures have looked so far from the few different versions that I have and the few different versions that I've seen. These are definitely the most crisp. These are definitely the most appealing looking versions because the quality isn't like downgraded. Like a lot of the time, like when they increase the size for those really big kind of electronic ones or the really big rubbery ones, it kind of decreases the quality because the size is so huge and the details just kind of not as nice. Whereas these are like a perfect size for the figures and just generally, again, look so much nicer than they normally do. And the paint schemes and paint applications are actually quite nice for these as well. Nothing crazy going on for the paint schemes, but I feel like they've done a good job of choosing tones of color that all look pretty natural on the figures and for the most part are fairly nicely applied. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at all 4 of these right now. So for the Dilophosaurus, again, sculpt-wise, it definitely looks nice. Like it has some pretty good detail on it. Obviously, it's got more of a Jurassic Park sort of a feel to it with the frill being on it. I would have preferred it without the frill because I feel like the sculpt would have still been pretty nice for it without that frill. But again, detail-wise, it definitely has a very nice looking sculpt, really quite highly detailed overall and quite appealing looking. Of course, not what we would call scientifically accurate, especially straight away we could see the wrists are pronated, but for what it is, it's still pretty cool. Coloration-wise, you can see that we have a nice greenish tone for the majority of the body. There's also a dry brushing over the face. You've got a kind of yellowish or goldish eye with a black pupil. The eye paint is definitely sloppy there. You can see a nice red for the crest. The red is applied with a gloss coat, so it shines, which helps that area to stand out quite nicely, which I do like. The jaw is articulated, but as you can see, it's super loose. loose, so it doesn't work all that well. The tongue is sculpted in there, but it looks really bad because it's just like really up off of the lower jaw in a very ugly and thick kind of a way, and the paintwork of the inside of the mouth isn't so great. The teeth are really sloppily painted, you can see that, and also the tongue, as far as that paintwork goes, they literally just took a red and ran it down the top, but now the entire side, you can see, is that same grayish tone that we see otherwise. So there's not really a whole lot of care that was taken when it comes to painting the inside of the mouth, and actually I wouldn't even say care, there wasn't much of an effort put forth to apply paint to the inside of the mouth, but you can see that there is some decent detail in there. The frill coloration is okay, I guess, for what it is. It's basically that same green that we have for the primary body color, but they've dry brushed the detail out and then kind of given us some like red and white sort of like squiggly designs here. It looks cool, looks fairly reminiscent to what a, kind of what a Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus would look like, but also kind of gives it that, defense type of a look, which is pretty much what the frill would be used for. So it looks okay, it's just, not that great. Kind of generic looking, but also not terrible. As you look here at the underside, you have a nice light brown that runs down the course of the underside, and as you can see, it runs the entire way out onto the tail, which is something we are definitely not used to seeing. As we move back here, you can see again we have those greens for the body, but there's also a nice dry brushing over the majority of the figure, and you can see we have like a dark brownish tone that kind of stripes down from the neck, and we continue to have that dry brushing throughout the entire figure. Yes, the paint does run all the way out there onto the tail, and it's a pretty smooth transition as we move down to that lighter tone. We continue to have more of those browns. You can see kind of striping through the leg. We also have more of that dry brushing. It's kind of like erratic as far as the way it's applied. It's not applied that nicely. It's just kind of all over the place. It does highlight the detail in the arm quite nicely, but then looks a little bit too intense on the hands. The nails are all painted with a black, but they're not painted very well. You can see some nails don't really have much paint on them, and other nails have them fully painted. So at least they made an attempt to paint the nails, but the nails as a whole just don't really look that great as far as the paintwork goes. And then we have the battle damage area here, which you can kind of see like some blood and guts, as well as the rib cage there on the inside, and it does have a glossy look to it, so it shines quite nicely. And we also have a sound effect. Yes, our Dilophosaurus has a Godzilla roar, and I'm pretty sure every one of these figures all have that same roar, the same Godzilla roar. I don't know why. You can see the head sculpt also looks pretty good over here. As you move back, though, you can see one screw hole, which isn't too bad, but there's also the battery compartment and the sound area. I don't mind those two very much, especially on a figure that's pretty thin. There wouldn't really be too many options to put it down here. I guess they maybe could have, but it's still not bad. I definitely have seen way worse, especially when it comes to Hasbro figures. And yes, they did make an attempt to actually paint the dew claw. This side, though, you can see we don't obviously have any type of a Dino Damage or anything like that aspect going on. Articulation-wise, again, we've got the jaw. We also have the neck that can swivel right there. And you also have the arms that can move forward and back. And then the same deal with the legs. And they actually all work really nicely. They move really smoothly, and you can swivel the tail. So some decent articulation on top of everything. Then you've got the T-Rex, and the T-Rex looks a little bit different as far as the Dino Damage aspect goes. You can kind of see like some of the muscle and everything pulled over the rib cage. Looks pretty cool. Still has that glossy look. Sculpt-wise, again, we absolutely have taken a look at this figure before, and the coloration looks honestly just as it did the first time around. Like, they didn't stray far at all from the original color scheme that I had seen on it a few times prior. The only thing that's really different that I can see on this one is this yellowish dry brushing is hideous here on the face. It really takes away from the appeal factor of the figure and is just like all over the place. You can definitely see we have a golden eye that as well is painted quite sloppily. As we move over here, you can again see that that ugly dry brushing is everywhere here on the face, the ugly paint of the eye, and then we also have an articulated jaw, but it does not work well. That's about as far open as it gets. Same style of paintwork with the tongue where they just really didn't care and they put a little bit of red over it. Sloppy teeth, just like the other one had. But again, it's still pretty cool for what it is. It's just not as great as it could be. As you move down, though, you again have variations of grays. You've got like a dark gray and then kind of like a light gray dry brushing. They definitely do a good job of attempting to highlight the detail and give it more of a lifelike paint job, more so than many other companies that make similar style figures. It's just that it's so sloppy. Whatever factory they use clearly doesn't care. Again, we have, unfortunately, pronated wrists. We also have way too large of arms, but we do have articulation in those arms. You can see it's a little stiff, but it works fairly nicely. Same deal with the opposing arm, and again, the articulated jaw, but that barely works. We don't have articulation in the neck like we did on the Dilophosaurus. We do, however, have articulation in the legs, which works pretty nicely. And again, you continue to see that same style of coloration as you basically have like grays and browns throughout. And they do transition pretty nicely back and forth. The nails do have a gloss coat, but again, they're painted so badly, so poorly. Like, look at that one. Look at the dew claw. They just slopped paint all over that. You can tell whatever factory is used by Wow World, they just try to hurry up and get it done, it seems. But again, the same type of paintwork here. As you move out, you have another gray for the underside of your T-Rex. And then again, the injury over here looks just like the Dilophosaurus did as far as the coloration goes. Maybe a slightly different tone of yellow for the rib cage, but yes, we yet again have the triple Godzilla roar for the sound effect for the T-Rex. Not great, but I wouldn't say it's as nice as the Dilophosaurus. Then we've got ourselves the Velociraptor. Now, the Velociraptor is similar to almost like a Velociraptor blue kind of paint scheme, because I could see a blue stripe running down through the side of the figure. So I'm thinking that that's probably what they were trying to cash in on, would be like a Velociraptor blue style figure. We do also have some grays, but we have kind of like a pinkish dry brushing over the majority of the figure. Like, you can see it all throughout the face. It doesn't look terrible, honestly. It does highlight the detail pretty nicely, and it also doesn't look near as bad as far as the actual application of that dry brushing compared to what we saw on the T-Rex. There are some random greens down here on the feet, which are kind of weird and out of place, but look at that. Look at how bad of a job they did of trying to paint that sickle claw right there. Like, half the claw is unpainted. You could tell again, oh, look at this, it's even worse. It's almost only the tip of the claw painted over here. Whoever paints these figures for them, they just don't care at all. We do, again, have an articulated jaw. It opens wider than the Rex did, but again, we have that same style of paintwork there for the inside of the mouth, though I will say the tongue definitely looks a little better on this one than it did on the others. The teeth are horribly painted, though, like, really, oh, if we can keep it still, really, really bad. You can see the white kind of running over there onto the skin flap of the inside of the mouth and everything. The paint is just everywhere when it comes to those teeth. The eye also is painted with a gold, just like we saw in the last ones, but not really all that well done either. It's a little sloppy, nice black pupil, and it does have kind of a shiny, glossy look to it. It's just so sloppily painted. There is a red kind of running up over the crest, almost giving it slightly sort of like a GP3 kind of look, like a Jurassic Park 3 Raptor, but not really all that great. Again, detail-wise, though, it does have some nice sculpt and detail throughout. It wouldn't be a bad figure if you got a hold of it to repaint and give it a nice fresh coat of paint that looks better than what Wow World has given it. It's still not terrible, just isn't great. But again, you can see we actually have the ears and everything sculpted out on the Raptor. But you can again see that the same type of look for this side is what we had seen on the other one, where we have that sound area for the rib cage, and then we've got that little battery compartment right there, though we don't have that screw hole like we saw in the Dilophosaurus, which, oh, never mind, it was hiding under the arm. So it is there, it's just not as obvious. And they did kind of do a good job of hiding it. You put the arm back, you don't even see it anymore. And then again, we've got the damage area here, the Dino Damage, Battle Damage area, and you can again see the same type of look, but slightly different as far as the sculpt goes, and yep, that is 9 Godzilla roars you have now heard for this video. You also, again, as far as articulation goes, you've got the jaw, the neck, so we do have the neck going on for the Raptor, and then the arms, which the articulation does work pretty nicely, I will say that. Legs, definitely works fairly nicely, and then again, a swivel tail. And then the final one is the Carnotaurus, and the Carnotaurus is very strange looking, but I always liked him because he has that kind of movie monster look to him. Like, he looks so exaggerated and so eerie. It definitely reminds me of a Carnotaurus I would have seen if like a Carnotaurus were introduced into a Doug McClure type dinosaur movie. Like, I feel like it would look something like this. But the sculpt, again, exactly the same as the previous versions we've reviewed. Paint-wise, I actually quite like the coloration, but it's similar to what we had seen the last few times, as we have kind of like a reddish brown, or almost even like a slight maroonish type brown. And then we also have some grays. They've again given it a nice dry brushing, similar to what we've seen on all of these figures, which again, I at least have to give them kudos for attempting to give some life to their paint jobs. The horns are painted with a silver, a very metallic, shiny silver, and you can see the eyes yet again are given that gold color, so no difference there. We do have an articulated jaw, really ugly tongue on the inside of the mouth, really sloppy paint again for the teeth. You know, pretty much the norm for these figures. You do have some nice detail, again, even leading down into the arms. Look at that nice kind of scoot-like appearance running down the arms. That looks really nice. The nails, even though there shouldn't be so many nails painted on the hands, are painted with a glossy black, and yes, they are super, super sloppy yet again. Like I said, these figures wouldn't be bad for a repaint or some customizing, but even still, again, for being just weird, exaggerated dinosaur figures, I definitely am a fan of these, and you can again see the detail looks pretty good over here. As I said, these are as crisp as these figures have ever looked, but you again have the sound area and the battery compartment, and some grays here for the underside. Even some kind of like orangish browns are actually included, so quite a bit of color variation to this one. And again, paint from head to tail. They attempted to paint nails, so you know, we have to at least give them props somewhat for their attempt to kind of give us a decent quality paint job on their figures, because, you know, some companies that we know and love don't put forth so much effort when it comes to their paint apps. It's just unfortunate that whatever factory that Wow World uses, the factory does not care about their products at all, and clearly Wow World themselves don't care much when it comes to their quality control, because they continuously allow their figures to come out of their factory looking so bad as far as the paintwork goes. I think Wow World is just more concerned with probably making money than making fans happy. But as far as the, you know, area here, the Dino Damage, you can see it does look a little bit different from the others, and yes, again, there you go. Lots of Godzilla for your day as far as those roars go. But again, it's an okay figure. Nothing great, nothing that I would say you absolutely must have. But if you're at your local TJ Maxx, these figures are out for the holidays, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to get a review up of them, at least to let you guys know, if I don't get the other review up before Christmas, of the other three, to let you know that these figures are currently at TJ Maxx to pick up, and you could potentially grab them. But again, it's kind of a fun Carnotaurus, just not really anything amazing. And yes, I did forget to mention all of the articulation for the Carnotaurus. Again, we have the articulated jaw, which does work pretty nicely. We also have articulation in the arms, which works okay. And then the legs, same deal, both legs. And then a swivel tail. So the majority of them have fairly similar articulation. The Raptor and Dilophosaurus have extra with the neck articulation, and then the Rex and Carnotaurus do not have neck articulation. I'm not going to measure each and every one of these because there's just a whole bunch, and you can see that they are all pretty much the same size. So we'll actually just measure the Dilophosaurus. I don't feel like we need to measure all of them because they're all right there around in the same size range. You're looking at about 8¼ inches or around 21 centimeters in length for the Dilophosaurus, and then height-wise about 5 inches or around 12½, closing in on 13 centimeters. And now I just knocked them all over. They do stand on their own, but they don't stand well. It doesn't take much to kind of knock them over. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our random Wow World figures. And you can see that they are decently sized. They're not great. I would give them a fairly strong medium size range. So, if you are looking for some of these figures and you're interested in a size, hopefully one of these figures here will help you out. But for one more comparison, there is a Mattel Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor there, kind of mixed in that big crowd of dinosaurs, the big crowd of Wow World dinosaurs. Just to give you one more idea of a size, you can see they are a little bit bigger than like an average Mattel Velociraptor, but not too much larger. However, you never know what you're going to find when it comes to these figures at TJ Maxx. I've seen the huge ones there. I've seen these smaller ones there. I've seen all sorts of them. So If you go to your TJ Maxx, you may find something totally different, but again, hopefully these figures will help to give you at least a slight idea of the size of these Wow World figures. So these Wow World Dino Damage, Battle Damage, whatever you want to call it, dinosaur figures are okay. They're very sloppy as a whole. Like, the paintwork is pretty bad on the majority of them, and some of them look okay. Like, I think some of the paint on the Velociraptor looks nice. Some of the paint on the Carnotaurus looks nice. The paint on the Rex, not so great. And the paint on the Dilophosaurus, not so great. All of them have fairly smooth transitions, but the thing that messes them up, I think, the most is the sloppiness when it comes to the dry brushing techniques that they use on a lot of them. Just doesn't look good because they choose bad tones of color to use for the dry brushing, especially in the face of the Rex. But also the sloppiness of the mouths and the nails and the eyes, because you can clearly see that whatever factory, again, paints these figures for Wow World, they just want to get it done. They want to get them out the door. They want to get them shipped to Wow World, to stores, to retailers, wherever they got to go. They just want them out of their face because they don't take any time to actually paint them nicely. The paint of the eyes is consistently sloppy in every one of the figures. The nail paint, probably the worst nail paint I've ever seen on dinosaur figures. Like, they're just really, really sloppily painted with zero care given to the actual application or placement of the paint. The Dino Damage areas, however, are all extremely precise as far as the paintwork and really, really well done, which is very strange that the paint is so sloppy everywhere else, but the Dino Damage areas look so good. And they also include a nice gloss coat in the Dino Damage areas, which is pretty fun. The sculpts of these, again, all are highly inaccurate versions of these dinosaurs that they are meant to represent, but they do have kind of a exaggerated, sort of a fun look to them. They almost kind of remind me of something like Chap May would produce, which I do really quite like Chap May, and I can always enjoy exaggerated, scientifically inaccurate dinosaurs. But again, the paintwork of these, I think, is the biggest downside. Also, the articulation on some works super, super smoothly. And then you have, like, the Dilophosaurus has a loose jaw that just hangs. The T-Rex has a really tight jaw that doesn't open very well. So even the articulation is quite inconsistent on these figures, but some of them have really, really smooth articulation, some of them not so much. Regardless, they're only like $7 or $8, so for that price tag per figure, again, it's a decent deal, and you're still getting some fairly fun figures. If you're going to buy them to repaint, you're definitely going to get some good candidates for repaints, but if you're buying them to keep them as they are, the actual paintwork applied isn't really that great, but again, it's passable, I guess. But like I said, these are currently at TJ Maxx for the holidays. One of the reasons why I really wanted to get this review up, just in case you might have been looking for these, which, I mean, maybe you were. I don't see too many people rushing out to buy Wow World figures, but in case you were, these are at TJ Maxx currently in my area, so hopefully they will be at your area, and you can go grab yourself some of these before they sell out. So make sure you do that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.